The universe was vast and filled with beings of unimaginable power. The Grivex, the Wythera, and countless other species had spent centuries conquering and dominating. But when they looked upon Earth, they saw something different: humans. To the galaxy's most powerful civilizations, humans were little more than ants scurrying around on a tiny rock, easily crushed underfoot. The idea that humans could be a threat was laughable. In the grand scheme of the universe, Earth was just another insignificant planet. Its inhabitants were weak, primitive, and unremarkable. The Grivax had advanced technology that could wipe out entire planets with a single thought, and the Wythera could bend time itself. The humans of Earth were far from their league, and everyone knew it. The Galactic Council had long held the belief that humanity was a lost cause. They saw the humans as nothing more than a collection of small tribes squabbling over resources. The idea that such a species could be a threat to the mighty civilizations of the galaxy was simply absurd. Their technology was primitive at best, and their military was scattered and disorganized. But there was a secret. Earth had been hiding something, a power that none of the galactic empires had ever seen. The Galactic Council decided it was time to deal with Earth. They sent an ambassador, a representative from the Council, to meet with the leaders of humanity. His name was Vorvek, an alien from a distant star system, and he carried with him the weight of the galaxy's judgment. He had come to deliver a simple message: Earth is no longer necessary. You are weak, and we are taking control of your planet. Zorvak arrived on Earth, expecting a simple diplomatic meeting. What he didn't expect was the cold, calculating gaze of the humans standing before him. The leaders of Earth had known of the Council's intentions for years. They had seen the signs, heard the whispers, and prepared in secret. As Zorvak addressed the leaders of Earth, he spoke with the arrogance of someone who knew they had already won. He told them of the might of the galactic empires, the centuries of conquest, and the advanced technologies that could erase humanity in the blink of an eye. He scoffed at Earth's primitive weapons, laughing at the idea that they could pose any real threat. "You are a dying species," Zorvak declared, his voice dripping with condescension. "The galaxy has no room for weakness. Surrender now, and we will make your extinction swift and painless." But as Zorvak spoke, something strange began to happen. There was a sudden shift in the air, a tension that was almost palpable. The human leaders exchanged glances, and their calm demeanor remained unchanged. They had heard this speech before, from other empires, other species. But they knew something Zorvak did not. "Your arrogance blinds you," one of the human leaders said, her voice steady but firm. "We are not the weaklings you think we are." Zorvak's eyes narrowed, a flicker of doubt crossing his face. He had heard this kind of rhetoric before, but it was always from species who thought they could stand against the might of the Galactic Council, and they had always failed. "Your words are meaningless," Zorvak retorted, "but we will see how you react when our fleets arrive." The room fell silent as Zorvak finished his speech, expecting the humans to bow before the might of the Galactic Empire. He waited for them to cower, for them to beg for mercy. But instead, the human leaders stood tall, unshaken. Then, without warning, a low hum filled the room. It was faint at first, barely noticeable, but it grew louder, like the roar of a distant storm. Zorvak's eyes darted around the room, trying to locate the source of the noise. His gaze landed on a holographic display at the far side of the room. The display flickered to life, showing a map of Earth's solar system. Zorvak's eyes widened in disbelief as the map zoomed in, revealing hundreds, then thousands of ships scattered across the vast expanse of space. They were massive, their sleek silhouettes unlike anything Zorvak had ever seen. They looked like a swarm of locusts poised to strike. Before Zorvak could react, the human leader spoke again, her voice calm but filled with an undeniable strength. "You have underestimated us for far too long," she said. "These are our supercarriers. We have 800,000 of them, each one capable of wiping out entire fleets, and they are ready to defend our planet. Zorvek felt his heart race as the realization hit him. The humans weren't weak. They weren't primitive. They had been hiding their power all along. The Galactic Empire had made a grave mistake, and now it was too late. The humans had been preparing for this moment for years, and Zorvek, with all his arrogance and all his confidence, had walked straight into a trap. The fate of the galaxy had just taken an unexpected turn, and it was humanity that would be leading the way. Zorvek stood frozen in place, his mind racing as the realization of what he had just heard began to sink in. His earlier bravado had disappeared, replaced by a cold, sickening fear. The human leaders remained standing with a quiet confidence, their eyes locked onto him with an unwavering focus. The hum of the supercarriers echoed in his ears, a sound that only amplified his growing unease. What is this?" Zorvek whispered, his voice betraying the fear he was trying so hard to hide. The human leader, who had spoken earlier, stepped forward. Her face remained calm, but there was an intensity in her eyes. "These are our ships. You thought we were weak, that we couldn't stand against the Galactic Empire, but you were wrong. We've been preparing for this moment." Zorvek struggled to process what he was hearing. The Earth he had come to conquer was not the planet of weak, defenseless beings he had expected. He had been sent to deliver a message, to bring humanity to its knees, and now he was faced with the terrifying possibility that Earth was not only capable of defending itself, but it might even defeat the mightiest forces the galaxy had ever known. The human leader continued, "We've studied your empires, your armies, your tactics for centuries. And we've learned. You underestimated us, but now you'll see the true power of humanity." Zorvek's mind raced. He had spent years studying the galaxy's most powerful civilizations. The Griveks, the Yterra, the Corians. Each one had vast fleets, incomprehensible technologies, and unmatched power. Earth's humans had never been considered a threat. So how could they have hidden such strength? How could a species that barely had interplanetary travel suddenly possess the ability to stand up to the Galactic Empire? Zorvek's gaze shifted from the map of Earth's solar system to the human leader's face. "Why didn't you reveal this sooner?" he asked, his voice shaking. "Why hide your power? Why allow us to believe you were weak?" The human leader smiled, though there was no warmth in it. "Because we knew you would come. We knew that one day the Galactic Empire would turn its attention to us. We've been preparing, quietly, for generations. We've built fleets, developed technologies, and honed our strategies. And now you will witness the consequences of underestimating humanity." Zorvek's heart pounded as he looked at the fleet. The map showed over 800,000 ships, each one a formidable supercarrier capable of launching devastating attacks. He had seen fleets before, enormous armadas of alien ships, but nothing like this. The sheer number of vessels was mind-boggling, and the thought of taking them on filled him with dread. He turned to the other alien representatives in the room, hoping for some sign of support, but they, too, were stunned. The bravado of the Galactic Empire's leaders had been shattered. They had been so sure of their superiority, so confident that nothing could stand in their way. Yet here they were, confronted with the terrifying reality that Earth was not the defenseless planet they had assumed it to be. The human leader, sensing their unease, spoke again. "You may have the strength of numbers and technology, but we have something you don't. We have unity, determination, and the will to protect what's ours. These supercarriers are only the beginning. If you make the wrong choice here today, you will see the full extent of humanity's power." Zorvek's mind spun. He had been sent to bring Earth to heal, to show them their place in the galaxy. But now, it was he who was trapped. The humans had no intention of surrendering or submitting to the Galactic Empire's will. They had made that perfectly clear. "You cannot possibly think you can defeat the Empire," Zorvek said, though his voice lacked conviction. "We have the forces, the weapons, the resources. We have crushed countless civilizations. You are nothing more than a speck in the galaxy. The human leader's expression didn't falter. You think you can crush us, but you have no idea what you're up against. We fought for survival since the dawn of time. Every war, every challenge, every obstacle, it only makes us stronger. And now you're the obstacle, and we will not back down. The room fell into a tense silence. Zorvac could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. He had never been in a situation like this before. Every part of him screamed for a way out, but he knew there was no escape. The humans had already won. He slowly turned to face the holographic map once more. The supercarriers were positioned in tight formations, their weapon systems ready to deploy. He could almost feel the power radiating from them, the intense energy of ships that could obliterate fleets with ease. This was no longer a diplomatic meeting. It was the beginning of a war. And Zorvac realized, with a sinking feeling in his chest, that he had underestimated the one species he thought was weak. The humans had proven him wrong. And now, the galaxy would pay the price for their arrogance. The tension in the room was palpable. Zorvac stood in front of the human leader, struggling to comprehend the implications of what he had just witnessed. His mind raced, trying to grasp the enormity of the situation. How could humanity, a species that had once been considered insignificant in the grand scheme of the galaxy, possess such incredible power? The human leader, noticing his stunned silence, seemed almost satisfied with the reaction. You don't believe it, do you? You've spent so long looking down on us, dismissing our potential. But now you see the truth. Earth is not what you thought it was. Zorvac remained silent. He couldn't respond. The reality of the situation was far more than he could process at once. His years of studying the galaxy had taught him that the Galactic Empire's superiority was unquestioned. But now, standing in front of the fleet of Earth's supercarriers, he felt an overwhelming sense of fear, a feeling he hadn't experienced in a long time. The human leader stepped aside, revealing another display. This one showed more than just ships. It displayed the intricate web of defenses that humanity had put in place across the Earth and its colonies. There were planetary shields, defense satellites, and advanced weaponry, each system designed not only to repel invaders but to strike back with overwhelming force. Zorvac could feel the weight of the human leader's gaze. It was as if she were daring him to challenge them, to try and fight against such overwhelming odds. And for the first time in his life, he was unsure if the Galactic Empire had the strength to win this battle. You came here to conquer us, the human leader continued, her voice steady and calm. You thought we were weak, but we've had centuries to learn. And now, we are ready. Zorvac's mind flickered back to the mission he had been given. He had come to Earth with orders to intimidate, to force humanity into submission. But how could he follow through with that now? The truth was, he was no longer certain that the Galactic Empire stood any chance of winning. We were sent to bring Earth to its knees, Zorvac muttered, more to himself than anyone else. We were told that humans were primitive, that they couldn't possibly threaten us. But now, I don't know what to believe. The human leader gave him a look of disdain, but there was also a glimmer of pity in her eyes. You should have known better. Humanity has survived wars, disasters, and all manner of challenges throughout its history. We've had to fight for everything we've achieved. But we're not like the rest of the galaxy. We don't bow down. We don't surrender. Zorvac glanced at the holographic map once more. The supercarriers, each one more powerful than anything he had ever seen, continued to surround Earth. The vast fleet could decimate entire civilizations, and he realized just how little the Galactic Empire knew about humanity. Their arrogance had blinded them to the truth. We came here to show you our strength, the human leader said. But now we'll show you our resolve. If you truly believe that the Empire can still take us down, then we're ready for the fight. But know this, we won't go down without making you regret it. Zorvac felt a knot form in his stomach. The confidence in the human leader's voice was chilling. This was no longer a simple conquest. It was a battle for survival. And as he watched the fleets of Earth's supercarriers, he realized that even if the Galactic Empire launched its full force against humanity, it might not be enough. The human leader's next words echoed in his mind like a warning bell. "If the Empire wants a war, it will get one," she said. "But this time, you'll regret underestimating us." Zorvak felt his knees weaken. He had been sent to conquer Earth, to prove the Empire's dominance over all other species. But now he could see that the situation was far from what he had imagined. The humans were not just fighting for survival. They were fighting to protect everything they held dear. As Zorvak turned to face the other representatives from the Galactic Empire, he saw that they, too, were shaken. Some had already started murmuring among themselves, their voices filled with doubt. They had underestimated Earth just as much as Zorvak had. And now, they were beginning to realize that the situation was far more dire than they had anticipated. Zorvak took a deep breath, trying to calm his racing thoughts. The reality of the situation was undeniable. The Galactic Empire was facing an unprecedented challenge. Earth had become a force to be reckoned with. The human leader stepped forward once more, her eyes locking onto Zorvak's. "The Empire has two choices," she said. "Either you leave us in peace, or you face the consequences. We've already prepared for both." The room fell silent as the gravity of her words sank in. The Empire had no idea what it was about to face. Zorvak could feel the cold sweat on his brow, his mind struggling to find a way out of this impossible situation. But deep down, he knew there was no escape. Earth was no longer a weak, defenseless planet. It had become something far greater, and the Empire's time of unquestioned dominance was coming to an end. Zorvak's mind raced as he stepped back, staring at the holographic map of Earth's defenses. It was an intricate network, too vast, too powerful, too well organized for a species that had once been written off as insignificant by the Galactic Empire. And yet, here it was, a human civilization standing tall, not just to defend itself, but to destroy anyone who dared threaten it. Zorvak could feel the weight of the decision pressing against his chest, suffocating him with each passing second. The human leader's gaze never wavered. Her eyes, cold and unwavering, were locked onto him, as if she already knew the internal battle that was taking place within him. She knew that the Galactic Empire had underestimated Earth. They had assumed the humans would cower, that their primitive weapons would be no match for the might of the Empire. But she also knew that, deep down, Zorvak was aware of the truth. The Empire had miscalculated. They had no idea what they were up against. "This is it, isn't it?" Zorvak murmured, more to himself than to anyone else. "The moment we've reached the edge of our power." The human leader nodded, her expression hardening. "You've reached that moment. The Empire has come to a crossroads, Zorvak. Your decision will shape everything that happens from here." Zorvak wanted to speak, to say something, anything that would reassure him that there was a way out. But the more he stared at the screen, the more he realized that the reality was settling in. He could no longer pretend that Earth was just another planet, just another conquest. He could feel the adrenaline start to course through his body, a reaction to the undeniable truth that the Galactic Empire was in danger. The Empire, the one that had conquered, controlled, and intimidated for thousands of years, was facing a civilization that had no intention of submitting. For the first time in his life, Zorvak was questioning his orders. He had never once doubted the authority of the Empire before, but now, facing the reality of the human strength, his loyalty was faltering. "We've done everything we can to prepare," the human leader continued. "We've already begun mobilizing. If the Empire wants war, we will fight until every last one of you is gone. But if you want peace, if you want a future where we coexist, then we will negotiate." Zorvak's stomach twisted. Negotiating. The very idea was foreign to him. The Galactic Empire didn't negotiate. They conquered. They obliterated. They demanded obedience. It was how the galaxy worked, or at least it had been. Now, Everything was on the line. The human's words rang in his mind, but Zorvak was still struggling to comprehend it all. "You underestimate us," the human leader continued. "But you have a choice. You can try to fight us and lose, or you can walk away and save your people from certain defeat. The decision is yours." Her words were like a hammer striking the anvil of his mind. Zorvak's hand clenched into a fist as his thoughts swirled. The Empire had always been the apex predator in the galaxy. They had crushed entire species, shattered civilizations. The idea that they could be defeated by humanity, of all species, was unthinkable. And yet, here he stood, witnessing their power firsthand. The supercarriers, the planetary shields, the hidden weapon systems that could obliterate entire fleets in the blink of an eye. There was no denying it. The Empire might not stand a chance against the humans. His mind flashed back to the simulation, when he had been shown the might of Earth's defenses. The idea of sending an army to crush them seemed almost laughable now. The truth was, if Earth chose to fight, the Galactic Empire would lose, and Zorvak would be the one to bear the consequences of that failure. But there was still a part of him that clung to the notion that the Empire was invincible, that they could overpower Earth's defenses with sheer force. He had been trained for this. He had been taught to never surrender, to never give in. But now, his instincts were telling him that to follow through with his mission would be catastrophic. The cost would be far too great. "What will it be, Zorvak?" The human leader's voice cut through his thoughts, the question hanging in the air like a blade poised to strike. He hesitated. Zorvak's throat felt dry, and for a moment, he struggled to find the words. He had come to Earth with one goal in mind: to force humanity into submission. But now, that goal seemed not only impossible but also reckless. How could he continue with a mission that would likely destroy everything? "You don't have to answer now," the human leader said, her voice almost sympathetic. "But the clock is ticking. Every second that passes is a second closer to the end." The truth hung in the air. If the Galactic Empire pressed on, they would face a war they couldn't win. The very power that had once made them rulers of the galaxy was now in question. Earth had proved that they were no longer the weak, defenseless species the Empire had once believed. They had proven that they were willing to do whatever it took to defend their home and their people. Zorvak's hand trembled slightly, and for the first time in his life, he felt as if he were standing on the edge of a precipice, staring down at the consequences of his choices. Would he continue the mission and risk the total annihilation of the Empire's forces? Or would he make a choice to stand down, to try and find a new way forward, one where both the Empire and Earth could coexist in peace? The answer seemed clear to him now. The question was no longer whether the Empire would win. It was whether they were willing to face the consequences of underestimating humanity. Zorvak paced back and forth in the command center, the weight of the decision bearing down on him. His mind raced through every possible outcome. The holographic map of Earth's defenses flickered before him, showing the impressive network of supercarriers, planetary shields, and devastating weapons that the humans had mobilized. Everything they had put into place seemed impossible to overcome, even by the Galactic Empire's might. He had seen their power firsthand. He had watched as they demonstrated their capabilities, each move more strategic than the last. The humans were far from the primitive species he had once believed them to be. Their technology, their tactics, their sheer will to protect their planet, it was overwhelming. Zorvak could no longer deny it. The humans were not only capable of defending themselves, they were capable of fighting back and winning. The idea of retreating, of abandoning his mission, was something he had never considered. It felt like an admission of failure, of weakness. But as he looked at the map again, he realized that continuing with his mission would bring about a war he could not win. The Empire, as powerful as it was no match for the human forces now arrayed against them. "I can't go back," Zorvak muttered to himself, his voice barely a whisper. "The Empire won't allow failure." But what choice did he have? The Empire had underestimated humanity. They had dismissed them as weak, insignificant. Now, humanity had turned that assumption on its head. Their power was undeniable. Their resolve was unbreakable. And Zorvek's mission, the one that had once seemed so simple, now felt like a fool's errand. He looked up at the commander standing before him. The human leader's gaze was calm, but there was an edge to it, as if she already knew what was going through his mind. She had seen it before, others who had doubted, others who had hesitated. She had seen them crumble under the pressure of facing humanity's true strength. "You know what needs to be done, Zorvak," the leader said, her voice steady. "The Empire has already made its move. You can either stand with them and risk the extinction of your people, or you can stand with us and try to prevent it. The choice is yours." Zorvek's eyes burned with frustration. He wanted to argue, to push back, but there was nothing left to say. The facts were clear. If the Empire continued its path of aggression, Earth would not only survive, they would prevail. The human forces were ready. They had prepared for this moment, and they would fight until the last one of them stood. It was a humbling realization, and one that Zorvek could not escape. The universe he had once believed in, the one where the Empire was the ultimate force, was no longer certain. The human species had rewritten the rules, had shattered the assumptions that everyone else had taken for granted, and in doing so, they had shaken the very foundation of the galactic empire. Zorvek's chest tightened. It was as if a heavy weight had settled on his shoulders, each breath a struggle. He thought of the thousands of ships that the Empire had at its command, the weapons they wielded, the power they projected. And yet, all of it now seemed irrelevant. The human forces had taken all that the Empire had thrown at them and countered with a level of innovation and ferocity that had never been anticipated. They were not just fighting for survival. They were fighting for the future. "What do I do?" Zorvak whispered, more to himself than anyone else. "How do I stop this?" The human leader stepped forward, her voice a calm but firm reminder of the truth. "You don't stop it, Zorvak. You let it happen. You let your people see the truth. That Earth is not your enemy. We never were." Her words hit him like a blow. He had been so certain that Earth was nothing more than an obstacle, a stepping stone for the Empire's expansion. But now he saw the bigger picture. Earth was not the enemy. The Empire's refusal to adapt to this new reality was the true threat. Zorvak looked at her, a flicker of understanding in his eyes. For the first time, he saw her not as an adversary, but as an ally, someone who understood the cost of war, the value of peace. And he realized that perhaps for the first time in his life, the war that had been thrust upon them did not have to be fought. There was another way. But could he make that choice? Could he turn his back on everything he had been taught, everything he had believed in? He clenched his fists, feeling the tension build within him. The sound of the ship's engines in the distance echoed in his mind, a constant reminder of the decision that lay before him. The human leader's eyes were steady, unwavering. "The choice is yours, Zorvak," she said again. "Will you fight for a future of destruction, or will you stand with us and find a way to end this before it's too late?" Zorvak's heart pounded in his chest. His mind swirled with confusion and doubt. The weight of his decision was overwhelming. The universe he had once understood was no longer the same, and with that realization, Zorvak knew that whatever he chose, it would change the course of history forever. Zorvak stared out at the stars, the cold void of space reflecting the turmoil inside him. The sound of his breath was the only thing that filled the silence, but it did little to calm his mind. Every fiber of his being screamed to follow the mission, to stand by the empire he had served his entire life. But another part of him, one that had grown over the past few days, whispered that it was time for a change. He had witnessed things he could never have imagined before he set foot on Earth. The human capacity for resilience, innovation, and survival had been beyond his comprehension. The supercarriers that Earth had mobilized were more than just ships. They were symbols of humanity's determination to protect their home. And in their wake, a stark truth had emerged. Humanity wasn't just capable of defending itself. They were more than capable of toppling empires. Zorvak turned to face the human leader, who had been silently waiting for him to make his decision. Her gaze was not one of accusation or impatience, but understanding. She knew what this decision meant, and she knew it was one Zorvak would have to make on his own. She had seen others like him before, those who were caught between two worlds, unable to choose a side. "You've seen what we can do," she said softly, her voice carrying the weight of years of experience. "You've seen our strength, our will. You've seen what happens when we are pushed too far. We didn't want this, Zorvak, but we won't stand idly by while the Empire tears apart our world." Zorvak didn't reply. His thoughts were too jumbled, his mind at war with itself. He knew what the right choice was, but the consequences were staggering. If he turned his back on the Empire now, he would be branded a traitor. His people would see him as weak, as someone who had abandoned their cause. And yet, if he continued with the mission, the destruction of Earth, and possibly his people, was inevitable. The realization struck him like a blow to the chest. No matter which choice he made, the Empire's dominance would be shattered. If he sided with the humans, he would be part of the force that stopped the war before it could escalate. But if he sided with the Empire, the entire galactic order would be thrown into chaos. The humans would fight for their survival, and if they won, it would forever change the balance of power across the universe. "I can't do it," Zorvak muttered, almost to himself. "I can't choose. If I side with Earth, I lose everything I've ever known. And if I side with the Empire, I risk destroying everything." The human leader stepped closer, her eyes steady. "Zorvak, it's not about sides. It's about what's right. The Empire has had its time. It's been built on the backs of others, conquered through fear and oppression. You know this as well as I do. Earth, the humans, we fought for survival, for freedom. We're not the same as the others you've conquered. We don't bend to power, we stand up to it." Zorvak felt a tremor deep inside him. She was right. His loyalty to the Empire had been blind, forged by years of tradition and duty. But now he saw the human spirit in a way he had never imagined. It wasn't just strength in numbers. It was a strength in belief, in conviction, that nothing the Empire could throw at them would break them. He had seen it in their eyes during battle, heard it in their voices as they strategized, and witnessed it in their resolve to protect their families, their planet. The stars outside the window seemed to pulse with their own energy, reminding Zorvak that there were forces at play much greater than any empire. He could no longer ignore the truth. Humanity had found its place in the universe, and it was no longer to be underestimated. "I've made my decision," Zorvak said, his voice steadier now. He could feel the weight of the decision settle on him, but there was a strange sense of peace as well. He knew what he had to do. The human leader nodded, a small but knowing smile playing at the corners of her lips. "We're glad you've come to see the truth. It's never easy to walk away from everything you've known, but sometimes the hardest choices are the ones that lead to the greatest change." Zorvak turned to the communication console, his fingers hovering over the buttons. It was time to send the message. The choice had been made. The Galactic Empire would learn what it truly meant to underestimate humanity. With one final glance at the human leader, Zorvak pressed the button. The message was simple. Stop the invasion. Stand down. The silence in the room was deafening. For the first time since he had arrived on Earth, Zorvak felt the weight of his decision lift, replaced by a sense of purpose. He had chosen a new path, and with it, the galaxy would never be the same. The stars outside the ship's viewports shimmered with an almost unnatural glow as Zorvak stood in the command center, watching the galaxy unfold before him. The cold, calculating machine of the Galactic Empire seemed so distant now, like a dream he could no longer relate to. He had spent his entire life in service of that machine, but now he was part of something entirely different. The choices he had made would ripple through the galaxy, altering the course of its future. He could feel the weight of the decision he had made, the decision to betray the very empire that had shaped his life, his identity, and his sense of duty. It wasn't a decision he had made lightly, but one that had been forced upon him by the harsh truth he had witnessed firsthand. The Empire's tyranny had gone too far, and the humans of Earth were not to be underestimated. Zorvac glanced over at the human leader, who stood beside him, her eyes steady and unwavering. She knew what was at stake, and despite the gravity of the situation, there was a quiet strength in her presence. She was a symbol of everything that had brought him here, everything that had opened his eyes to the possibility of change. "We have a long road ahead of us," she said, her voice calm but firm. "But with your help, we can stop this war. We can take down the Empire before it destroys everything we've fought for." Zorvac nodded, his jaw clenched. He had never been one to trust easily, but after everything he had witnessed, he could no longer ignore the reality that the humans were not only capable of defending themselves, but of bringing down entire empires. "I never imagined it would come to this," Zorvac replied, his voice tinged with regret. "But I see now that the Empire's reign has to end. If we do nothing, the cycle of destruction will continue, and countless more will suffer." The human leader's eyes softened. "The fact that you see that now means a lot. It shows that the truth can change even the most ingrained beliefs. We're all in this together now. The fight isn't just for Earth, it's for the galaxy." Zorvac's mind raced as he thought of the battle ahead. The Empire's forces were vast, and they had the firepower to obliterate entire worlds. But what they didn't have was the unity, the heart, and the sheer will of the humans. They were more than just fighters. They were survivors, and that made them a force to be reckoned with. He turned to the communications officer and nodded. The final message was ready to be sent. It was time to give the Empire a choice: stand down or face the consequences. He knew the response would not be kind, but it was necessary. As the message was broadcast across the galaxy, Zorvac felt a strange sense of finality. There was no going back now. He had made his stand, and humanity had made theirs. The future of the galaxy was no longer in the hands of an empire that ruled through fear and oppression, but in the hands of those who dared to fight for freedom. Across the stars, the Galactic Empire's response came swiftly. Warships began to mobilize, preparing for what they believed would be a swift and decisive victory. They underestimated Earth's resolve. They underestimated humanity's ability to fight back, to adapt, and to win. The human spirit was not something that could be crushed by a fleet of warships or the threat of annihilation. It was something far stronger, and it was something that the Empire had never seen before. As the Empire's war machines began to advance, Zorvac watched with growing anticipation. The battle had begun, but it wasn't just a fight for Earth anymore. It was a fight for the future of the galaxy. Humanity's forces had proven their strength. Now they would show the Empire just what it meant to face a force that would not yield, a force that would not be intimidated. Zorvac had seen the might of Earth's military, the supercarriers, the sheer numbers, and the unwavering resolve of the human fighters. They were ready for the challenge. The only question now was how far the Empire would go before it realized the truth. In the command center, the human leader spoke again, her voice steady. "This is the beginning of the end. The Empire may be vast, but it will crumble just like the rest. We are the future." Zorvac stood tall, his heart steady for the first time in years. The fight was far from over, but he knew one thing for certain: humanity would not back down. The time of the Galactic Empire had passed, and the galaxy would be forever changed. It was a new era, one where the human spirit would rise, unstoppable, against all odds. And so, with the full weight of his decision, Zorvac knew the final battle was about to begin. He had made his choice. There would be no turning back. The stars outside the observation deck flickered in the distance, but inside there was no peace. The weight of the decision that was about to be made hung heavily in the air, felt by everyone in the room. Zorvac stood before a holographic screen, watching the final message he had drafted. His fingers hovered over the controls, ready to send it to the entire galactic empire. This message would mark a turning point in history, humanity's declaration that it was no longer going to bow to an empire that had ruled with fear and domination for eons. His mind raced back to the first time he had set foot on Earth. He had been sent as part of a diplomatic mission, an effort to evaluate the humans and report back to the empire. At the time, he had found them primitive, disorganized, emotional, and fragile. He had underestimated them, just like the rest of the galaxy. But that was before he saw them fight for their survival, before he saw their resilience, and before he realized what kind of power lay beneath the surface. They were no longer the helpless species he had once thought them to be. Earth's people had proven their worth, their determination, and most of all, their strength. Zorvac's thoughts were interrupted as the human leader entered the room. Her gaze was focused, her expression resolute. She knew what was at stake. They both knew that once the message was sent, there would be no turning back. The Empire's reaction would be swift and merciless. There would be battles, bloodshed, and the loss of lives, innocent and guilty alike.